Hey guys, so in today's application, we'll be taking a look at this countries API and also implementing this beautiful dark mode, light mode feature. For the first time comers here, my name is Sipiwo. In this channel, I try to cover everything design and development related in order to assist you to become the best developer that you inspire to be. If that sounds like something that you can get behind, go ahead and click the subscribe button, click the bell button so to get notified every time I publish a new video. And if you like this type of content, go ahead and smash the like button. The YouTube algorithm likes that for some weird reason. With that much said, let's quickly take a look at the overview of this application. So we have a simple search bar over here and a drop down bar over here where you can filter out by region. So if we click on Europe, you guys will see immediately it filtered out. We have this React router functionality that if I click on a specific country, I can view more information about that country. I have this back button, will take me back to all of this, and I can go ahead and filter out the countries by text. So I can click south and I'm going to click on South Africa because that's where I'm from, and we can see more information about South Africa. We can click on the back button, and obviously the part that I really like about this application is that dark mode feature where everything just looks nice and beautiful. And if you want to go back to light mode, we have that functionality as well. So if you guys would like to know how I got this to work, if you guys would like to know how we can do this using this countries API, React, Tailwind CSS, and also React router, stay tuned for this video. So let's go ahead and install all the dependencies that we're going to need for this application. So first things first, so let's install Tailwind.css. So I'm just going to go ahead and say Tailwind with React. Open up that page. You guys can go ahead and read this documentation. Just follow all the steps that they give you. Do everything exactly. I do believe that this documentation is so good, I don't actually need to go through it over this video, but if you do want to see how I do it in one of my videos, a link should pop up right about now. Check it out in that video. We have done this step by step. So go ahead and do all of these as instructed right here. The only part you guys really don't need to do is this section over here, adding all of this. That's if you're not going to make application live. You are going to make it live, push it up to production mode, do add this step over here. If that is done, I suggest the next thing you need to do is install React router. You can go ahead and just run in your command line npx or npm install react-router-dom and let that run. And once that has completed, you are ready to follow along with me coding this video. So as you guys would know, with all my videos I use Visual Studio Code. You can go ahead and open up your project in any editor that you like. I like Visual Studio Code, and as you guys would see right over here, I've done some cleanup with my application, remove all of the files that I'm not going to use, like the test.js, apps.css. I remove all of those files. I'm just going to open up index.cs over here so you guys can see I've done that step that they instruct me to do by Tailwind CSS. I've created the Cargo .config file. I've also added in my package.json to say instead of running using npm, run using Cargo over here. And I've also created my Tailwind config file over here, and the changes I've done is that my dark mode is set to class instead of false. So I've set that to class because I'm actually going to use a CSS class to trigger up my dark mode for my application. With that said, in my index.js, I've just removed all of the imports that I'm not using. The same goes with my app.js, remove all the imports that I'm not using, and just added this h1 test over here just to make sure my application runs as it should. Now we are ready to get cracking with this application. What I've done is I went ahead and run my application using yarn start or npm start, and as you guys can see, my application is running right here in the browser. It says test at the moment. Just needed to make sure that I'm not getting any errors after deleting those files. Now that I'm not getting any errors, we are ready to get started with implementing some of the files that we're going to need for this application, creating them, and also adding some scripts. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get this out of the way. So I'm going to go into my public folder in my index.html, and what I'm going to do is just add this link over here to Font Awesome because this is the icons that I'm going to use in my application. So you can go ahead and use any CDN for this, or you can get it by Font Awesome's website, sorry, and just add that CDN or that link there so you can use Font Awesome icons in your application. And the only other thing that I need to do here is, in order for us to use the dark mode and light mode feature for the entire application, I'm going to add this class over here. So I'm going to say class, I'm going to add that colors. I'm going to say my background color by default is going to be gray 100, and once it goes dark mode, I'm going to say dark, and then I'm going to say background color, and it's also going to be gray, but instead of 100 I'm going to make this 800. So what I'm saying this here, on dark mode my background color is going to be 800, but usually my background color is going to be this light grayish color. So I can go ahead and save that, and now that is saved, we can go ahead into my app.js. Let me just go there, close that folder over there, my app.js, and it just adds some functionality to this. So basically my app.js is going to be my router file. I didn't go the route of creating a navigation folder and creating all of those routes in there. I just did it in my app.js. Yes, I am lazy. You guys are 100% correct. So let's go ahead and do this. You guys need to use best practices, obviously, when you create applications, especially if they're going to go live and you're going to publish them to the internet. But if you're doing one just for learning and maybe just increasing your knowledge about React, routes, and also Tailwind CSS, I don't feel the need to actually be so strict with it. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So you guys will notice that every time I click on enter, it imports, but this is not the type of import in one, because it's saying it requires, what I want to do is to say import. So I'm gonna say import, and I'm gonna say switch, and also import route from React route to DOM. So I'm gonna calling those from there, and then what I'm going to do is here I'm going to say my first route, I'm just going to add a path to it. It's equal to /details, and close it, and I'm going to wrap a component inside of this, and that component I'm going to call details. I'm going to have to go create that component because it's not created as of yet. And then my second route, I'm going to add a path to it. It's just going to be my home initial route. And I'm going to add another one here. I'm just going to call it home. So I also need to go ahead and create that component, that home component over there. And that is the 2. So what I'm going to do over here in my source directory, I'm just going to go ahead and create a new folder. I'm going to call this folder pages. And inside of this page, I'm going to create a new file. The first I'm just going to call home.js. And the second one I'm going to call details.js. So my home.js is the one that you're going to see once the application loads, and then my details.js is the one you're going to see once you've clicked on a country. Once you've clicked on a country and it views the more details, that is where the details page actually comes in. So let's do those import quickly. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say import home from, I'm going to say directory, actually current directory, which is going to be pages /home. It's going to be home.js, and we'll do the same thing for my details. I say import details from current directory pages /details. I'm importing those two, and now that I've done the import, I need to go ahead and look at my home.js file. So let me just save this. And I'm going to go to my home.js file. I'm going to say React function component export RFCE. So it's just going to create me that boilerplate with that home over there. And inside of this div, I can just go ahead and add a h2 tag saying loaded. Let's say loaded from home. I'm going to save this. Do the same thing with my details. And for this one, I'm going to say loaded from details. So I'm going to save this, and let's go back to my browser. Let's just refresh. See, I'm getting an error. It's saying error failed. You should not use switch outside a router. So let's go back. Let's see what if I'm mistaken. I think inside of my index.js file, inside my index.js file, I should be adding React router over here. I'm gonna have to replace this guys with React router. So what I'm gonna do is just highlight both of these. I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna press Alt, highlight that one as well, and I can change this to router. And if I do that, let's hit enter, it's gonna import router for me from React router dash DOM. I actually want it there, and I'm gonna change this to say I want the browser router actually to be imported as the router, and I'm gonna wrap my entire app application with that, and that error should then be sorted out. So let's quickly refresh here, and you guys can see we have loaded from home. And if I go to /details, I should see loaded from home still. It should actually say loaded from details. Did I change that? Loaded from details, yes. Say details, loaded from details. Okay, so then my navigation is working correctly. Let's go back to my home and let's get working on this home page. So what we're going to do in the home page firstly is just set up the API to go ahead and get some of those information for us. So let's set up some of the usual stuff that we know we are going to use, and that is the countries. I'm going to say const, I'm going to say countries, say set countries. So this function is going to set my countries. I'm going to use state, enter. So currently I'm just going to have an empty array. So my initial state for my countries is an empty array, and I'm going to go ahead and set another variable, the const mode, set mode, which will be my toggle, my mode. So I'm going to say use state, then my use state on default is going to be true, so that's going to be a boolean. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my use effect. So what I'm going to do in use effect is the following. Just need to import that and create my empty array over there. So inside my use effect, what I wanted to do is that on load, I need you to do a fetch function for me and call that fetch function with all of the information and set it up into this countries array. So I need that to do on initial. So this use effect is going to work like component on mount or component did mount fire this event so that I can have that running. So let me create a function here, which I'm just going to call const get countries is equal to an async function, which is not going to take any params. So I'm going to say const response is equal to fetch, and I'm going to fetch some information from https //rest countries.eu /rest /v2 /all. So it's going to get all of the countries, and I'm going to say const data is equal to, wait, I need to actually add this here as well, await response.json data, and then I can go ahead and do set countries equals to data, because data is then going to be the array that has been returned. So in here I can just go ahead and call this function inside of my use effect. I'm going to call that function. So on initialize, it's going to call this function for me, and that function is going to get all of my countries, set them up into this array, and then I can use that data over there. So that's the one that I currently have. And then the next thing I need to do is just build out the design. Let's firstly do that. So inside of this div, I'm going to have a main div over here with a class. So class name, I'm going to give it a background color. So my background color, it's going to be gray, so of 100. and dark mode. So I need to move that so I can see. PG gray of 800, and I'm gonna do dark mode text. So in dark mode I want my text also to have a color of white, and I'm gonna remove this because I'm not gonna use that anymore. I'm gonna create a new div, and I'm gonna add a class name. So with Tailwind Css, as you guys might have heard in my previous video, if you haven't checked that out, I highly suggest you go ahead and do. But basically all that we are doing is just adding a lot of styling while we are coding our application, which makes Tailwind CSS actually very nicely, because all of the classes have been destructured or created in a sense that you are using the CSS elements instead of entire CSS class. For instance, with Bootstrap, will be able to give you a couple of classes that you can use to get some layout in it, etc. But what you can do with Tailwind CSS is actually just go ahead and run grid, and this will do a display grid for you. I can actually change that and say instead of running grid, do flex for me, and it gives me a display flex. So I'm actually adding deep level classes straight in my div tags in order to get the layout, the look and feel that I want. And that is, in my opinion, that is awesome, because now I am designing while developing an application. Okay, I'm not selling Tailwind CSS to you guys, but I'm just giving you guys a piece of my mind and how I feel about it, and why you guys would see me use it more and more in my videos. So let me know in the comments if you guys think that Tailwind is worth it. Do you see any negative impact that it might have on your application, or if you're just not a fan of it, let me know why you guys are not a fan of this framework. So let me go ahead and add another div tag, and now in this div I'm just going to do a display flex and have a width of container, and I'm going to say margin on the x-axis is going to be auto, and inside of view I'm going to have an h1 tag, and my h1 tag is just going to be where in the world. So where in the world are you? Probably, I think that should have been a question. I don't know why they call it where in the world, but I'm just following the design to get it as close as possible as I can to the initial challenge, because that's what Frontend Mentor is all about. Can you get the design that you are challenged to do, to get it as close as possible to the initial design? Okay, so now that I've done my h1 tag, I'm just going to create another div tag also with a class name. I'm just going to add a couple of CSS elements over here. So I'm going to say margin left, it's going to be auto, and I'm going to add a font size of medium. The font's going to be medium, and in here I'm going to have my toggle button. So I'm going to create a button, and this button I'm just going to do a function on here. So I'm going to add an on click event which I want fired when someone clicks on this button, and I think I'm going to call that function say toggle dark mode, or maybe just toggle mode. And then what I'm going to do is just create that function right here on top, that toggle mode function. So I'm going to do just below you. So let's say const toggle dark mode. So toggle dark mode is going to be equal to an arrow function. And I'm going to say if, I'm going to do an if statement, if mode, which is true at the moment. So if mode is true, do the following for me. I need a closing bracket. So if mode is true, do the following for me. Do a document element, which would be the body dot class list dot add. I'm going to add a new class to it, and that class is going to be called dark, which then will activate the dark mode to it. It's a set mode, and I'm going to say mode is going to be equal to current So take the current mode and set it just to the opposite of it. Current is equal to the opposite of current. So what I'm doing over here is missing an equal sign, but what I'm doing, I'm saying take the current mode, which is true, and just set it to the opposite of true, which is going to be false. So when it's false, it's going to take the current false and set it to the opposite of false, which is going to be true. That's all I'm doing here, just toggling it. And I'm going to do another if statement here to say if mode is false. So if mode is not true, then do the following for me. So I can go ahead and just copy this, because I'm going to remove this clause. Instead of saying add, I'm going to say remove, and I'm going to do the same thing with this set mode over here. So I'm going to say const toggle btn, say set toggle btn for button is equal to use state, and then initial state is going to be a font awesome icon, which is going to be I'm going to add a class to it, double quotation marks, for dash sun, close it, and also close that, and I can say light mode. So this is going to be my initial it's going to be my initial start icon. So when the application boots up, it's going to always be on light mode, and that's what it's going to be, on light mode. But then once it's set over here, I can go ahead and change that. So let me do that. So if mode is true and we added the dark mode, I wanted to change the dark mode. So I also want to say set toggle to this new icon. This is a different icon, so I'm going to say icon class is equal to, close that, and I'm going to say dark mode. So let's add this icon here. That is fast dash moon, which is that moon icon, and I'm gonna reset it back right here as well. I can go ahead and copy you back to light mode. So over here I'm just resetting it back to the sun one. So let's do that inside of my button. So inside of my button, what I'm going to do is add a dangerously set inner HTML, say equal to, because we are actually setting this inner HTML right there, and I'm gonna just echo out here that toggle button. Okay, so basically this is going to set the inner HTML for this button as whatever I've passed through over here. So I've done that. That's the header section. Let's click save and let's see how it looks. And there we have it. So as you guys can see, we have our button over here with that sun icon. We have that text. We have a nice shadow going. If I click on this, it already works, and you guys can see it toggles everything into dark mode, and the icon changes and the text changes, and we can toggle it back to light mode. So let's go ahead and code the rest of this application. So let me go down here. So I'm going to add a new div, another div tag, and I'm going to add my classes in this one as well. Class name is equal to, so I'm going to say this one is going to be display flex, also a container, and I'm going to say margin on the x-axis is going to be auto with a margin bottom of 16, because I want to keep the space uniform. Inside that, I'm going to add a icon, which is going to be my search icon. So I can actually go ahead and say font awesome 4-search, and you guys would see that my package will actually go ahead and generate this for me. So there I have it, my font awesome 4-search. I can go ahead and remove that part, which I'm not going to use, and I'm going to add a couple of CSS classes inside of this as well, which is going to be margin on the y-axis is going to be auto, because I want it to be centered on the vertical. sorry, horizontally. I want it to be circle, centered, and I'm also going to add a minus margin. So I'm going to say margin right. It's going to be -9 because I want it to be over the search box. I'm going to add a Z index here of 10. A padding right of 2, and then a padding left of 3, and a padding on the y-axis of 5. I'm going to say rounded MD, which is just the border round, and I'm going to add a text color to this. So my text is going to be gray 400. So that's going to be my icon. So this icon is going to overlap on my input, which is my search box, and I'm just going to create that now. So that's my input. I'm going to say type is going to be text. Then I'm going to add a placeholder to this, and placeholder is going to be search for a country ... and I'm going to add some classes to it. I'm just going to hit Control B to close up my sidebar over here so I have more space to work with. So let me just do class name first is equal to that, so I don't have any errors. Control B, that close up my sidebar over there, and now I can go ahead and add that classes inside of my input. So over here, so I go ahead and add a padding left, which is going to be 10, and then padding all around is going to be 2. So what it's going to do is it's first going to take this padding and then just add this 2 on the remaining axis. But if I don't have this one, it's going to add padding 2 to all of them. So that's kind of nice. And I'm going to add a shadow to my input as well. So my shadow is going to be MD for medium. Same goes with my rounded corners. It's going to be MD. And I'm going to say width, which is, this is very interesting. So what I can do is I'm going to say take the width of the current view and make this a 1/3 of that view, which is nice, right? So basically in Bootstrap, this would look something like col-md- let's say 3. It would look something like that. But this looks actually much better because this is like mathematical. I'm saying take the width and make it a 1/3 of it. I can say make it a half of the view, make it a 1/4, whatever, but I want to make it a 1/3 of the current view. Now that I've done that, I can add my class saying dark mode. So inside of my dark mode, I want my background color to be gray and also 700. And then I can go ahead and add a onChange function to this. So I'm just going to hit enter, take away that space. So I'm going to say onChange. So when someone changes the value, I want you to do the following for me. Sorry, just going to be a function, which I'm going to go add on top right now. So onChange, we're going to take the current term and we're going to pass that term through to search country, and I'm going to say term dot target dot value. I'm going to pass the value through to search country, so I need to go ahead and create that search country function over here on top. I'm going to do right below that function, say cost search country. It's equal to, it's going to take in a value, which I'm just going to call term, and actually remove these, which is going to be an async because we are going to do a lookup with the API. I was just thinking now why this color didn't change. It was probably just waiting for those brackets. So we're going to do an async function, but the first thing that I want to do is do an if statement. I want to say if term, which was passed through, dot its length, it's less than 3, so it's less than 3 characters, or the current term is actually empty, just return nothing. Okay, so don't do anything because I want you to type more than 3 characters or more for the search to actually run. So if you type more than 3 characters, let's say const res is equal to await the response from fetch API, and I'm gonna do https:// rest countries.eu /rest/v2, and I'm gonna say /name / because we are searching my name, so I can do $sign. So once I do $sign, and I'm gonna pass through that term, so then it's gonna take whatever term that you pass through and it's gonna search it using that in the name. And I'm gonna go ahead and say const data is equal to await response.json, and I can go ahead and say await set countries equals to data. So I'm overwriting the current array with this new array, so then it's only going to show me the countries that are applicable to this array, okay, to this search term. Now that we have that, next thing that we need to do is that drop down. So we currently have the search in here, so there's my input and I have my icon. So the next thing that I need to do is add that drop down, so I can go ahead and do it right here. I'm going to say select, close that select up, and let's add some classes to this as well. So I'm going to say class name is equal to margin left. It's going to be auto. So what I'm doing with margin left auto is that it's going to push it to the far right side as possible. That's why I'm adding the margin left auto there. Margin on the y axis is going to be 2. Heading all around is going to be 2. I'm also going to add a shadow to this, which is going to be MD, and I'm going to add rounded is also going to be MD. So I'm adding just my border rounded there to have nice round corners. I'm going to say my font size is going to be medium, and in dark mode what I want to do is add a background also gray. So my PG gray, it's going to be 700, and on here I'm also going to add a function to say on change take the current value. So I'm going to say take the current value and also pass it through to a function which I'm going to create, but that function is going to be called filter by region. And I'm going to do the same thing as on top. I'm going to say value dot target dot value. So it's going to pass through that value right over here. And let's go ahead and create the drop down options. So in here I'm going to say option. So the first one is just going to be filter by region, which is the default one that we see, and I'm going to add a option. Okay, seems like I can't type option anymore. Option is going to have a value, and just close that, and I'm going to copy this down 1 2 3 4 5 times, and my first one is going to be Africa. Just do that. So I'm going to say Africa, wait, lowercase. Second one is going to be America, and then I'm going to have Asia. Let's do Asia. Take away the capital letters here on the side, and then I'm going to do Europe. I'm going to take away the capital E, and last but not least Oceania. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, so that's actually Oceania. So it's Oceania, and those are my drop downs. The only thing I need to do now is go create this function, this filter function here on top as well. So let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to say const, let's say filter by region. It's going to be equal to, it's also going to be an async function. So filter by region is going to be an async function. I'm just going to call this region as being passed through. It's going to be an arrow function, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do an if statement first to say if region is equals to blank, meaning that the first one has been selected, return nothing, so don't filter out. So basically if someone goes ahead and select, let's say select America, but then it goes back and selects filter by region, we don't want you to run this function. Okay, we don't want you to go ahead and run the fetch function. So I'm going to go ahead and say const response It's going to be equal to await fetch to finish. So let's wait for the fetch to finish. And that fetch, I'm just going to copy the section right here on top, and I'm going to paste it in here. So, and then I'm going to say region instead of name. I'm going to say /$ curly braces, and I'm going to pass through that region. I'm going to pass through that, and we're going to do the same down here. Say rest data is equals to wait for the response of the JSON data to resolve. Say JSON. And I'm gonna say, once I've done that, let's do, once all it has run, to set countries. So set countries is gonna be data. Okay, so now set country is gonna be whatever filter that you have applied to it. So let's save this, and let's go ahead to back to my browser, and let's see how this looks. As you guys can see, we have a search over there, and we have a drop down over here working nicely. It looks nice. Even go dark mode, you can still see everything. So our application is getting there. The only thing we need to do now is just loop out or create a component to hold all of these thumbnails, all of those, if I go back here, all of this countries thumbnails, and also nice spacing over there, and then make them clickable. That's what we need to do next. So let's go ahead and do just that. So I'm going to go back to my application, and right below this div, I'm going to create a new div, and inside of this one, I'm also going to add a class name to it. We're going to make it a container, and this one's actually going to be a grid instead of flex, and I want to have grid columns 4. I want 4 columns of this grid, and I'm going to add a gap of 16 between the columns, and I'm going to say margin on the x-axis is going to be auto. And now what you're going to do is loop out this countries array right here on top. Let's go ahead and do just that. If I scroll back down here, sorry about that, I'm just going to add some curly braces and say countries dot map, and inside of this map I'm just going to say country, and I'm going to say index because I don't have a ID associated with each space of the country. So I'm going to use the index because React is going to nag me for a key for all of these that I'm going to loop out. So what I'm going to do is add link. So this link is actually from React router. If I hit enter, just going to scroll up again just to show you guys, it imported link there from React router, and that's the link we're going to use actually to navigate. Okay, so I'm just going to close off that link and hit add this closing tag here of the link, which is great. And I'm going to go ahead and inside of this link just add the 2, which is going to be the path that it's going to go to. I'm going to say 2 it's equal to, so first thing first is the path name, which is going to be the route name. So I'm going to go ahead and call this details, which is that page that I've created. And then secondly, any information that I want to pass through to that route is just going to go over the state section. So I'm going to say my state is actually going to be the country data. So all of the data inside of this country, I'm going to pass it through as state to this page, and then I can use it on that page. And the other thing I need to do, as I've just said, is add a key to this, because React is going to nag me that when looping something, it needs to have a key. I think I'm missing something here, guys. I'm going to need to create an open bracket there, and then create a closing one over here. That takes care of that error. I'm going to hit enter, and inside of this is the component I'm going to create. So the component I'm going to create is called thumb detail, and my thumb detail is going to have a couple of params. So the first one is going to be title, which will be equal to country dot name, which is the name of the country. Second one is going to be image URL. So then my image URL is going to be country dot, sorry about that, country.flag. If you guys are wondering where am I getting this information from, I'm going to show you now shortly. Let me just quickly just do this. Population, actually going to be country.population, and I'm going to have region, which is also going to be country.its region, and then lastly I'm going to have capital, and that's also going to be country.capital. Just be an equal sign over there. Okay, so if I save this now, it's actually going to give me an error because I haven't created this guy. So let me not save it and just go back over here. Let's do F12 to inspect element, and let's see, it's nagging me about something. Okay, so it hasn't captured actually when let me just refresh this, and let's see if we do any get. Now we get an all over there. Let's open this up. So basically with that, the response, we get all of these objects as in array, and you guys can see the information that I've just passed through to that thumb detail. It's all of this information. So it's the name, it's also the capital, the region, as you guys can see, the region, and what else did I had over there? See the flags for the image. So this is where I'm getting all of the information from that I'm passing through to the component that I'm going to create now. So that component is actually just this thumb. They text in this minimum information, the flag, the title, population, region, and capital. But when you click on it, we get more information about that certain country. So let's go ahead and create this thumb detail component. So I'm going to hit Control B to open up my sidebar. Close that. Let me close my pages. I'm going to go to source, create a new folder, components, and inside of my components I'm going to go ahead and create that file, detail.js, and I'm going to React function component export. So inside of thumbnail details, let me firstly go ahead and do those imports that I did props. So I'm going to destructure this out of the props. So the first one that I want to call is the title, and I'm going to call image underscore URL. We're going to have population and region that we're passing through in this props, and also capital. Okay, and then let's go ahead and do some styling to this. So I'm going to add a class name, and this class name is going to have a container with rounded corners. I'm also going to add a shadow to it, nice large shadow to it. My background is going to be white, and in dark mode, what I want my background is to be gray, 700. And I'm going to say in dark mode, I also want my text to be white. So I'm going to say dark text white. And then I'm going to say my padding bottom is going to be 4. Okay. And inside of that, I'm going to add my image. My image source, it's going to be image URL, which is the param or the prop that was passed through. Also going to add a class name to this image. So I'm going to say image height, it's going to be half of the thumbnail. So that's going to be 1/2. And its width, it's going to be full, because it's going to be full width, 100%. And I'm going to add classes rounded to it. So rounded top left, it's going to be large, and also rounded top right, it's also going to be large. And I'm just going to add an alt to this because React is going to nag me. And I'm going to make this alt actually the title that's being passed through as well over there. And now I'm going to create a new div. Let's say div, and inside of this div I'm going to say class name is equal to padding all around the 4, and that's it in here. And I'm going to add an h3 here, which is going to be the country name. So this is going to be title. So I want my h3 to be bold, so I can go ahead and add a class there, and I'm going to say font bold, margin bottom of 4. That's nice spacing from the title to the information below it. I'm going to add a paragraph tag to this, and inside of this paragraph tag I'm going to add some span, because I want some information to be different to the others. I'm going to say class name, that's going to be equal to text small, because that's going to be my text size. Please make it extra small, and I want to duplicate this down. So first thing, inside of this span I'm going to add a class name to it. So I'm going to say text is going to be gray 700, and in dark mode I'm going to change the text to be gray 300, which is a bit lighter, and that's it. So now I can go ahead and copy this down 3 times. So the first one is going to be my population. Secondly, it's going to be my region. Thirdly, it's going to be my capital. And I'm going to go ahead and pass that information through inside my span. It's going to be my population, which I can just copy over there, put it between curly braces. Same goes with my region, put it between curly braces, and my capital. And I'm going to put you between curly braces as well. So now I can go ahead and save this. Let me go back to my home and save this, and hopefully we don't have any errors. Let's refresh. I'm going to have an error because I didn't import this thumb detail here on top. I need to do that. I'm importing thumb detail from not the current directory, actually, components / thumb detail. Save it. See, and there we have it. As you guys can see, our application is coming along. Have our image. You can see immediately it changes when I hover over it to a clickable event. As you guys can see, the cursor changes to my hand. In order to show that we can click on it, we have the title with that minimum information over there, and once click on it, we're going to go ahead and view more information about it. So let's quickly see. If I do a search here for S, nothing happens. O, nothing. As soon as I press U, it filters out. So that worked correctly. If I refresh this, if I refresh it, then I go to my filter and say filter by, let's say, Europe. You guys can see it changed. Let's say Africa, it changed. But as soon as I go to filter by region, it throws me an error because it can't map anything out. So I think that's where my if statement here on top didn't really take effect. Let's see, that is countries, toggle dark mode, folder by region. So I said if region is blank, it's empty return, but over here I didn't actually set any value to it. So if I change this value and just say value is actually empty, and I save it, we go back here, and that should work. So let's quickly see. If I say filter by Europe, that worked. If I go ahead and say filter by region, we don't get an error anymore because of this if statement over here. So that works. So next thing that we need to do, guys, is go ahead and work in our details page in order to make sure that the information we send through to our details page actually picks up correctly. So let's go ahead to our details page, and I've already set that up. So I'm going to go ahead and start the styling. Let me remove this, and I'm going to add classes to it. So let's start the design phase over here. So I'm going to add a background color. It's going to be gray. You guys should know this by now. 100, and dark mode, my BG color, it's going to be 800, and in dark mode my text is going to be white. And inside of this div, we're going to add another div tag. And I'm going to say class name is going to be equal to my width. It's going to be screen, which is going to be a 100 view screen. And I'm going to add a shadow to this. The shadow is going to be MD. Padding on the y-axis of 6, padding on the x-axis of 3. And I'm adding a background color of white. And in dark mode, I'm going to add my background color of gray, 700. And my text in dark mode is going to be white. And I'm going to add my margin bottom of 16. And inside of this div, I'm going to add another div. So let's say class name is going to be container, going to be display flex, and also margin on the x-axis is going to be auto. Inside here, I'm going to have an h1 tag, and my h1 tag is actually going to be where in the world. So basically what I'm doing here on top, I'm just recreating this section right here. I'm just recreating that section on top, and I think I could actually just go to my home page instead of typing everything out, just copying it, because it's exactly the same thing, which doesn't have the search box, just a button, which is this guy right here. Just gonna copy that, go here and paste it there. That's it. So now we can go ahead and create this page as content. So I'm gonna add a new div. Class name is equals to, it's gonna be container. Sorry guys, it's going to be a container, margin on the x-axis, it's going to be auto, and then my margin bottom, it's going to be 16. So this one is just going to be the container for my button, my back button. So let's do that. Let's do button. So this button is going to have a class name. I'm just adding a class name to this button as well, padding on the x-axis of 8. And then padding on the y-axis of 2. Background color is going to be white. My text color is going to be gray. Gray 600. I'm going to say my shadow MD. And say rounded corners, large. And I'm going to go ahead and add my dark mode here. So I'm going to say in dark mode, I want my background color to be gray, 700. And in dark mode, I want my text to be white. I think I have everything there. Background white, text, shadow, rounded. And the only thing I need to add here is actually an on-click event that's going to take you back to the home page. So right over here, I'm going to say on click. So when someone clicks this button, it might take you back to the main page. So this one's going to be on click. Say go home, btn, and I'm going to go create that function in a moment. In here, I'm just going to add a arrow icon. So font awesome 4 arrow left, so arrow pointing left. I can remove this arrow hidden, not gonna use that, and here I'm just gonna add the text back. So let's go create this function called go home. So the first thing that I need to do is just also add some of the states that I'm going to use. So let's add some variables over here. So const mode, and the reason why I'm adding this is because I have this toggle button over here that I'm using, so I'm going to need to add all of those features here on top. So I can say toggle mode and say set mode, which is exactly what it does on the other side, to set to dark mode or not, which is going to be equal to use state. and this is also going to be true, exactly as we did on the home.js file or on the homepage file. And I'm going to say const toggle button. Just go ahead and copy that from here. I don't need to go ahead and rewrite it and make this tutorial much longer than it needs to be. Just copy those two, and I'm just going to paste them here. And then next thing that I need to do is I'm going to add this actually from React router. So I'm going to say let state is equal to use location. If I hit enter, you guys will see it imports there from React router, use location. And the other one that I'm going to use is called history. So let history equals use history. That's also from React router. So this use history is just going to push it back to the previous one. So I'm going to go ahead and create a function. I'm saying const go home btn is equal to a arrow function of just history dot push, and what are we pushing is string of / which is the home route. Okay, whenever this is clicked, this button over here, just the home button, is going to take us to the main route. That's what that does. So this state over here, if you guys do remember, is if I go to my home and I scroll down to where we did the loop, which is down here, you guys remember that inside of this link over here, I said I pass through a path to where it needs to go, and also the information inside of this state container over here. So this country, which is just an object of the entire information about that country, will be stored inside of this state, and I can go ahead now and access that information using this state. So I'm just pulling this state out of use location, which was passed through using that link, and now I can use this state inside of this page. So let's go ahead and finish up with this application by just doing some of this information. So let's do another div, let's add class name to it, and I'm going to add a couple of classes to this. So I'm going to make this a container. It's going to be display flex. Margin on the x-axis is going to be auto. Padding all around of 8. Padding on the left side of 0. And also padding on the right side also 0. And then inside of this div, I'm going to add an image, which is going to be that big flag you guys see when you open it up. So I'm going to say my source is actually going to come from state.flag. But remember now that state is actually my object with all of, it's my object with all of my object information. So that state has become the object that, with all of the information that I've given it. Sorry about that. So class name is gonna be my width. I want my width to be half of the provided view. This is for my image, and also my padding right to be 8. And I'm gonna add an alt here so that React doesn't nag me about images, must having an alt, and that's gonna be state.name. Let me close this, the self-closing tag. Let's do a new div. Sorry about that. So I'm gonna say class name is equal to, so inside of this div, I'm gonna say padding of 8. And then padding on the left hand side of 0. And inside of this div, I'm going to add an h2, and that h2 it's going to be the title. So I'm going to say state.name, and this h2 going to have some classes. I want to make this font a bit bigger. Class name, let's say font bold, and also text gonna be extra large ×2, and then my margin bottom is gonna be 8 just for spacing below this. Add a div over here, and this div gonna have a display of grid. and I'm gonna say grid false true. Just gonna have 2 columns, and my gap between them it's gonna be actually on the x-axis gonna be 20, and then my gap on the y-axis is gonna be 4. Then inside here I'm gonna have a couple of p tags with span tags, so let me do that. So I'm gonna add a p tag, and then I'm gonna say span, close that up, and all of the span tags are gonna have the same classes. So let's add that class name over here, and I'm gonna firstly say in dark mode I want my text color to be gray, so that's gonna be gray 400, and usual, so in light mode it's going to be gray 700, and my text is going to be small. That, and I'm going to copy this down a couple of times. That's going to be 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Roll this up, and let's fill in the information that comes in here. So first thing first, we have native name, so I'm just going to pass that through over there. It's going to be state dot native name, and secondly what we do have is population, and I'm going to pass that through as well. Population. Next thing we do have is region, so region do the same on this side. So now we're just populating some information. As you guys can see, nothing fancy over here. Most of our design, it is being handled by Tailwind CSS. So as we are busy developing this application, as we're busy going ahead and creating the application, we are actually also doing the design of it. So it's not just handling the functionality and then getting back to the design. It's basically planning out your design of your application, the look and feel, how it's going to look and feel, while also deciding on the functionality that it's going to have, what type of functionality that you want to implement, and what way or when do you want that functionality to be implemented in your application. So that's basically what Tailwind CSS allows us to do, and as you guys can see, that's what I've been doing throughout this entire application. I haven't just been focusing on the design, nor just focusing on the functionality, but I've kind of been doing both of them at the same time, which makes it actually time saving. I don't know, do you guys think it saves you more time to design while actually developing, or would you prefer just doing the old school way where you knock out the functionality first, and when you know that everything functions the way you do want it to function, then you go ahead and start focusing on the design aspect of things, where you focus then on the layout, look and feel, and how you want your application to look? Let me know in the comment, guys. I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what you guys think. I want to know what your feelings are when it comes to designing while developing. Are you more to just first develop your application, knock out the functionality, and then worry about the design? Or do you prefer doing it this way, where you kind of focus on your design while also focusing on functionality of your application? Because that's basically what I'm doing at the moment. So let's see, last but not least, I have languages. So basically why I'm mapping over currencies and languages is because they are arrays, but a country could have more than one language. Come on, guys, I think you know that much. So I'm just mapping over all of this so that we display more than one language. So I'm going to say lang dot name. Just gonna add a comma to that one, and I don't think this last one here is necessary. and I think we have it. So let's save this and let's go back to our application. Having a toggle dark mode is not defined on line 18. Toggle dark mode function, so let's go copy that function. That's that, so it's you. Let's copy you over to details, and then right below you, I'm just gonna paste you there. Save. Now that we have you, we have our countries loading, we have our search functionality over here, we have our light mode, dark mode working. We click on South Africa, there's our flag, and there's more information about South Africa. Guys, I hope that you really like this tutorial. I hope you guys learned a lot by following along. And as I've promised you guys with most of my tutorials, is that I want to add a challenge to each one of them at the end of the tutorial, where I challenge you guys to add a functionality or add a function or component or whatever in order to push you to code along, in order to push you to actually plan and think about the application. So in today's video's challenge, it's going to be, if you guys see, I'm just gonna go ahead and go to folder by nothing and just refresh this so that it loads everything. As you guys would see, just look at my scroll bar over there. If I scroll down, it loaded all of the countries. So we're looking at an array with a lot of objects that being passed through. So the challenge here for you guys is to say add a pagination or a load more type of button where it only loads 25 of those objects, and then once I click the load more button, it will load the next 25, and it will do that as I keep clicking the load more button. So yeah guys, that's it for today's tutorial. I hope you guys have learned a lot. If you have, hit me up in a comment. If you like this type of tutorials, as I've said, smash that like button. The YouTube algorithm loves that for some weird reason. Until next time guys, do your best to stay safe.